Right, good evening, everybody, and welcome to the third session of the Laws of Cricket course. Thank you for taking some time out of your Monday night to add to your umpiring toolbox, and we hope that tonight will be beneficial to all of you. I'm going to hand over to Michael Mellifont tonight. We have Michael and Nathan James and Tom Logan who are going to take us through tonight's material, and hopefully you all got an opportunity to undertake the quiz. I sent you an email this morning which had all the details, so hopefully you found that to be insightful and interesting as well. But over to Michael. You're on mute, Michael.
I'll start that again. Thank you, Matthew. And thank you, everybody, again for joining us tonight on the third session of the Winter Laws courses. So tonight will be our second section of gameplay, where we're going to be looking at some specific laws that surround that. Just reminding everybody that we are on the current edition of the laws, which has been the case for the last few years. The laws we're looking at tonight, it's a small number, but they're very, very, very important ones, particularly Law 20. So there'll be a fair bit of time spent on some of those laws. That's why we've kept it the number of laws down so we can have a really deep dive into the important stuff. Usually we have questions all at the end. Tonight I'm going to go a little bit differently. We're going to have questions after we look at Law 20 dead ball. I'm going to actually stop and take questions then and there after we've covered that law. I anticipate there could be a few questions about it, given its sort of complexity, how much it sort of features in the game, the flow of the game, and its interconnections with other laws, which we'll talk about pretty much now. Okay, so Law 20, dead ball, is, in my opinion, the foundational law for umpires to understand. This is an absolute must. If we are to understand any law in its fullest, it has to be this one, because this law underpins everything that happens in the game. It underpins when runs can be scored, when wickets can be taken, when penalties can be given. So this is the genesis, the fundamental law that we base everything else off. And this is one we should be reading and familiarizing ourselves with as well as looking at our Tom Smith's. And the MCC e-learning website as well has a lot of added information to help explain what the lawmakers intend for us to interpret when it comes to this law. Okay, so we're going to get settled here. So the first thing that is worth bringing up is that play is in progress from the call of play to the call of time. Okay, so play is in progress all of that time. The ball is not always in play during that time. It switches between live and dead, in play or not in play. So that's the first point to make. Law 20.1 prescribes the instances when the ball is dead. The ball switches from live to dead. You see listed here when it's settled in the hands of the wicketkeeper or bowler. And what that means is at the end of the play. When a boundary is scored and the batter is dismissed, whether it or not, it becomes, whether played or not, it becomes trapped between the bat and the person of a batter, or between items of their clothing or their equipment. Okay, and we're going to look at the difference soon. It's a very subtle difference between trapped and lodged, but it's really just semantics because they're both covered. Whether played out or not, it lodges in the clothing or equipment of a batter or an umpire. The ball is dead when it is required to be so. under particular laws, such as player returning without permission and illegal fielding. If there's a contravention to 28.3, which covers protective helmets belonging to the fielding side that have been discarded or left on the ground, and what happens there. Obviously, the ball is dead when the match is concluded. Big phrase here that we're going to really draw in on. Bowlers and umpires' opinion that the fielding side and the batters cease to regard the ball as being in play. And we're going to look at that very deeply soon and dispel a couple of myths that often come up. Okay. So to say that looking when the ball is in play each time a bowler begins their run-up or delivery action. The ball actually becomes live, and it stays live until all activity from that delivery ends, either automatically or by umpire signal. Okay. So when the ball is finally settled, and that's up for the umpire to determine when the ball has settled in the keeper's hands or the bowler's hands or the fielders that are acting for them. Basically, when the play is deemed to have been done or completed. And the call of over or time, the law prescribes that the call of over or time shall not be made until the ball is dead. It's very important to note there that the intention is not for the umpire to kill the ball by calling over or time. It's expected of the umpire to wait until the ball has become dead before calling over or time. It's a common error you might see, particularly with newer umpires or less experienced umpires, where the ball will be returned from the boundary, and while it's still in the air, the umpire will call over. Now, the call of over makes the ball dead, but it shouldn't have been called dead. The umpire on that occasion really ought to have waited, or really should have waited until the ball became dead before calling over or before calling time. So it's just really important. It's not up to us to kill the ball. It's up to us to determine that the ball is dead when it is dead. And we'll talk more about that in the coming slides, in instances where that can be a problem. Just having a look again. So where other umpires are required to call and signal dead ball under law 20.4.2, the provisions below, and 0.14, the ball will be considered to be dead at the instant of the incident causing the ball to become dead. All that means is if there is a delay in the umpire calling it dead from when an incident causing the ball to become dead happens, the ball's dead from when the incident itself happened. An instance that might be a delayed giving of a dismissal. The ball's deemed to have been dead when whatever caused the dismissal happened. Similarly to 20.4.14, which we'll talk about in a sec. So the law specifically provides for the call to be delay sometimes, so as not to disadvantage the non-offending side. One of the common ones for that is things like restriction on the striker's runner. So when the striker and their runner have left their ground to take off for a run, rather than call dead ball and call them back, it would actually benefit the fielding side to allow play to continue, because what that allows is the potential for a run out. And certain things under Law 41, unfair play, and Law 42, unacceptable conduct, will also cause the ball to be dead, but the call in the delay might be a factor. Okay, so as a general principle, dead ball is called by the umpire in instances to prevent unfair play or further danger in terms, for example, an injury, and is usually considered dead at the moment of the incident, and even if the call is delayed. So, umpire calling and signalling dead ball for instances of fair play, um, possibly serious injury to a player or umpire. So, an example of that might be a short ball hits the batter in the helmet hard, and the question then becomes, do we call dead ball? And the answer is it depends. So we're looking at possibly serious injury to player or umpire. If in receiving a head knock like that, a player immediately falls to the ground, that is probably, more than probably, a case of possible serious injury, and you're probably calling dead ball straight away then. If it's come off the helmet, gone into the field, and the batter concerned is running for a leg by, and seems to be okay on their feet, you might be holding off on that call of dead ball, waiting for the ball to become dead before making sort of inquiries. And it's really a judgment call, and it's really hard to say right here, right now, what the correct call to make in any given situation would be. If there's times where you need to leave your normal position or the umpire needs to leave their normal position for consultation, dead ball should be called and signalled. If one or both bails fall from the striker's wicket before the striker's played the ball, on instances of a windy day where the bails just dislodge at the striker's wicket, that must be called and signalled. A question might be, well, what about the bails from the non-striker's end? And the answer to that is it's not mandated under the law to call and signal dead ball. However, in my opinion, if bails are falling off from the non-striker's end as the bowler's running in my opinion, that must cause some sort of distraction to the batter. And in that case, I would be opting to call and signal dead ball in that case, even though I'm not mandated to. However, I don't have that discretion when it comes to the striker's wicket. If the bails fall off, we have to pull up play. Call and signal dead ball in instances where the striker's actually not ready. That happens not that uncommonly. And importantly, makes no attempt to play. Sometimes, you might get a striker who will say to you, "Oh, but I was rushed. The bowler was coming and I was rushed, and I went to play at it and I didn't play it the way I wanted to." So the ball would become dead if the striker is not ready and makes no attempt to play. And this really comes down to match awareness. And sometimes it won't be so clear cut, but that's the law governing it. If the striker is distracted or by noise or movement, or in any other way distracted or put off, obviously that would be a call and signal of no ball. And because those last two examples happen, or the last three examples happen prior to the striker having a chance to face that delivery, that ball wouldn't count if they haven't had a chance to receive the delivery. Okay. Other instances where the umpire calls and signals dead ball happens when there is a deliberate distraction or obstruction or deception of the striker or batter. In those instances, the ball is to be called dead before the next sanctions happen. When the bowler accidentally drops the ball before delivery. In an instance where a bowler throws towards the striker's end before entering the delivery stride. Now, we're going to be talking about that in a later law, which is talking about the wicket is down. Basically, that refers to an old law where one of the ways you could dismiss a striker is by the bowler before entering their delivery stride, throwing the ball to the striker's end. They canned that, or they got rid of that particular instance in the laws in the last code, so it hasn't been the case where you could do that for a while. So if a bowler decides to try that, it's just a dead ball and nothing else, but you call and signal it. If the ball doesn't leave the bowler's hand for any reason, they either abort the delivery or it just doesn't come out, and that's obviously a dead ball. If a ball in play cannot be recovered, so this was a bit of a look at the old lost ball law, where if the ball in play could not be recovered, so it might be a case it's gone down a goalpost hole, if it's an AFL field or something, or it's gone down a drain. Usually the drain's off the field and the ball's dead anyway. But if it's in play and for whatever reason the ball cannot be recovered, it's called dead ball. It may be the case that the ball has been hit and has split or broken in a really rare case, and that would be a similar example where you would call and signal dead ball. You're not going to, yeah. If either side has been disadvantaged by a person, animal, or object within the field of play. This is usually involving cricket that actually has people there watching, or numbers of people there, and that just covers those instances where the game's interfered with, and it's up to the umpires then to determine whether a boundary, for example, would have happened if the ball had been allowed to reach the boundary before some idiot came on and blocked it, or whatever the case may be. But obviously, if something like that disadvantages a team, we'll be calling and signalling dead ball. The striker attempts to play the ball, chase a wild one, and no part of the person remains within the pitch, so they've run off the pitch, or run off the confines of the pitch. Once that happens, it's obviously a dead ball, and a no ball as well. And if the umpire is required to step in under any other law or any other instance, a call and signal of dead ball is required, mainly to let the scorers know that play is being paused. Okay. So as you can see, there's a fair bit to this. The ball obviously comes back into play or stops being dead once the bowler next starts their run-up or bowling action if they don't have a run-up. And obviously it can't be revoked. So once it's dead, it stays dead, and nothing can bring it back to play for that delivery. No revoking of any decision. And we're going to look more about that shortly. But very important to realise that it cannot be revived, even if it's a mistaken dead ball call, like the incident we talked about, or I mentioned before, of an early call of over or an early call of time before the ball is dead. The ball is not or should not be called dead before it is dead. But if an umpire does call it dead in error, that actually does make the ball dead too. All that means is you can't say dead ball, oh wait, oops, sorry, no, the ball's still live, play on. We just don't have that provision. Once it is dead, it can only be brought back into play when the bowler next starts their run up. So we can't undo that mistake. Things like a wicket being given, or a wicket being given and then revoked. So a dismissal being awarded, for example, and being revoked. And you'll often see it if we look at sort of a professional level, if we look at televised games, where you have, player reviews, and basically a dismissal is overturned. So a batter's reviewed a dismissal, it's been overturned. No, you're not actually out. You're not out LBW, it was going down leg. But they still wouldn't get the boundary allowance in leg byes for that, because the ball would have been deemed dead at the time the umpire gave it, even though it was shown not to be out. So once dead, remains dead until it's brought back into play as described. And that is, again, hugely important. It's really important for us to understand when the ball counts as one in the over and when it doesn't. And basically, it comes the main principle is that it can't be counted as one in the over if the batter hasn't had an opportunity to play at it or to receive it. And receiving it is more than just playing at it. That means leaving it or anything like that. That if the striker hasn't had an opportunity to receive the delivery, it cannot be counted as one in the over. In addition to that, obviously no balls and wides don't count as one in the over as well. But things like that happen after the striker's received the delivery, particularly in cases like the striker is distracted by noise or movement. So that generally happens before, so when they're preparing to receive it. A player returning without permission, and that can happen before or after they've received the delivery. Illegal fielding of the ball and distraction, obstruction or deception of the batter. The ball is not to count in those circumstances where a dead ball is called for those. So we need to understand that, yeah, obviously when they do and when they don't. So here is a bit of a scenario here. I'm just going to read out the scenario and I'll ask a question here. This is not one of the quiz questions, but just to illustrate. So a player on the fielding side returns to the field without permission after the ball has crossed the boundary. This player jogs over to his keeper, who hands him the ball to polish and throw back to the bowler. And the question here is the player in the wrong? Has Law 24.4, player returning out permission, been breached? So that's a bit of a question here. I will sort of spoil the answer a bit. The first part of the question asks, is the player in the wrong? The answer is yes, the player is in the wrong for returning without permission. And I'd argue too, if the captain was aware, the captain is in the wrong too. Has there been a breach of Law 24.4, player returning without permission? And the answer is not yet. There hasn't been an instance at this point, even though the player who's come back without permission has touched the ball. The ball is not in play when that happens. Okay, so yes, the player is in the wrong. No, there is no breach. The ball was not in play when the fielder touched it. So in that case, there is no sanctions or anything like that. The ball's already dead. However, in this next scenario, a player on the fielding side returns to the field without permission at the end of an over. This player jogs over to field at first slip. On the first ball of the new over, the ball keeps low, I meant to say, and is edged along the ground and stopped by the fielder at first slip. In this case, has Law 24.4 been breached? And the answer is yes, because the player who has returned without permission has fielded the ball while it's in play. So two sort of similar scenarios. The big difference here is that the ball was touched while it was in play, and that opened the door to a penalty being applied. Whereas in the first instance, the ball was already dead, and touching the ball when the ball's dead doesn't actually activate any of those penalties. In terms of umpiring fieldcraft, though, once you notice that player was back on, you would be certainly having words and very stern words about the importance of seeking and getting permission to come back onto the field of play. So there's two instances. I'll just go through another instance here. A striker drives a delivery very straight. The bowler attempts to stop the ball as it passes her. The ball clips a stump at the non-striker's end with the non-strike out of her ground backing up, and removes the bails from the wicket before travelling to eventually cross the boundary behind the bowler. The fielding side appeals for a run out, and the umpire, believing that the striker had touched the ball in transit, gives the non-striker out, run out. The bowler, knowing that she had not contacted the ball, asks her captain to withdraw the appeal, which does happen, and the dismissal is revoked. But the question now from the striker is, well, do I get my 4 runs? I cracked that back pretty hard. I think I'm entitled to 4 runs. Do I get them? Unfortunately for the striker, the answer is no. The dismissal, although revoked, made the ball become dead at the instant that the wicket was down. So once the umpire deemed that the batter was out, that made the ball dead. It was later cleared up. A dead ball, even an error or misunderstanding, sort of remains dead. It was later cleared up. The dismissal was revoked. However, the ball was dead at the point of it breaking the wicket.
I've got
stupid place to do it. I'm sorry.
I like it out here.
Okay. Similar scenario, well, a different scenario here. In the case where the ball becomes, we'll say, lodged. And I'm hoping this video works. So it wasn't a very serious incident then, but it was a bit small to see. The ball gets caught up. It's contacted the bat. It's got caught up in or lodged in the batter's pad. The keeper has come over and attempted to take the ball out in a sort of joking way and then jokingly appeal. And if the video was frozen, I'm sorry about that. I was hoping it would work. However, yeah, it's a pretty common YouTube clip. Just look up ball lodged or something like that, and it'll show you. But the appeal was only made in jest, but basically it was a case of well, it's hit his bat and it's trapped in his pad. If I pick it up, can I claim a catch? And obviously, no. The ball has become lodged and it's dead at the point at which the ball becomes lodged. Therefore, the dead ball would apply because it's automatically dead. Okay. So, at this point now, I'm going to invite questions here. I do see there is some in the chat log. But yeah, well, I'm going to look at any sort of questions purely related to dead ball. I can see some hands come up too.
Dave Dancy's first up.
Okay, Dave. Unmute, please, mate. I think you're still on mute there, Dave.
Okay. Might get Dave, if you can type your question in the chat there, that might be a tech issue that Dave's having there.
Yeah.
All right. Naveen was next up.
Okay.
Hey, Michael. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah, cool. All right. So just a quick question. In terms of bowler running in, if he had a handkerchief or a towel behind his back, and as soon as he was jumping in, it comes out of the pants and it falls on the ground. But as an umpire, you haven't seen it. But it's not a deliberate distraction. How do you treat that kind of scenario?
Yeah. Look, it is. In that case, so you said has he sort of taken his stride? I would imagine most of the time you probably would see it. If I saw that and it was at the point of takeoff, again, to me, I'd be thinking in sort of common sense here, if I'm the batter at the other end, is that likely to cause me any distraction? And the answer is likely to be yes. I think it's likely enough to be yes.
Yeah.
I would be inclined to call and signal dead ball in that case when that happens, particularly at that point. It might be the case where he first takes off, or they first take off for their run up, and it's fallen out the back, but then they've continued running in if it's a pace bowler, and then it probably is not a strict rule about the towel falling out, but I reckon at the way you described, at that point of taking off for the delivery stride, that's a pretty precocious what's the word?
Distraction kind of thing.
Yeah, it's pretty distracting. So rather than letting it play out and then the batter getting out and getting annoyed because the towel distracted them, if I pick it, I'm just calling dead ball. And then I'll offer to the bowler, do you need me to hold that rag, or can you give it to someone, or because so I would say call and signal dead ball on that occasion.
All right. Go.
Yeah,
thanks, mate.
That's my opinion. Okay,
Ken Gibson was up next.
Yeah, Ken.
Yeah, I've typed down.
I saw that.
Yeah, I just wonder. I had a situation where in one game, it was down the Gold Coast a couple of years ago, where we had a magpie who found its way to just behind square leg, and a ball went down in that area. And I was just wondering, in this situation here, you don't call it dead straight away because the ball is still in play up until the fielder is running towards the boundary before the magpie takes on. Maybe they've already taken 2 runs. The ball's going to the boundary, but the fielder can't stop the ball going into the boundary. Are any runs at all allowed?
Yeah, so look, I think what you're talking about here is you're implying here that the bird swooping has prohibited the fielder from adequately fielding the ball. Is that what you're getting at?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Oh, look, yeah. Again, so this is a case by case thing, but I think that provision in the law, going back a few slides, about people from out or things from outside the game coming into the game, like person or animal, I think that's the sort of thing that this law is designed for. So if you, as the umpire, feel that bird or some sort of aggressive animal, it might not be a bird, it might be an aggressive dog or something, something which clearly inhibits the fielder from fielding a ball, you'd be calling or you'd be considering calling and signaling dead ball at that point. That you determined that's happened. And in which case the runs, you said they'd have already run a couple of runs, those runs would still count. The ball would still count, but no further play would continue, which means they probably wouldn't get that boundary necessarily if you feel that the fielder could not have stopped the boundary. So it'll be a case of working out, how much of a concern or prohibitor that particular bird was. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does, and that's the way we counted it. I just wanted to make sure under those provisions there that my actions I took on that day were correct.
Yeah, I think the law's designed for that very thing. So, very good question. Dave, I've seen your question now. Just out of curiosity, if the boundary 4 was disallowed due to the wicket being broken and the non-striker was given out, what is the fallout if the boundary was scored off the last ball of the game and would have been won by the batting side? Yeah, I can't imagine the batting side would be incredibly thrilled about it. However, as umpire, the way I'd be explaining it is, sometimes these things happen. I was, if I'm the umpire who gave it out, there was an appeal from the fielding side. I thought that the ball had flicked the bowler's fingers, so I gave it out in good faith. The bowler says that she didn't touch it, and the fielding side, withdrew the appeal, and we put your batter back in so they don't lose their wicket. But unfortunately, those 4 runs, they're gone. There's really nothing we can do to get them back because the ball was dead at that point, and we can't resurrect a dead ball just by saying oops. So, yeah, that would be a discussion that would require a bit of diplomacy. Yeah, I wouldn't envy the umpire in that situation. Put it that way. Michael Blacklock asks, the batter moves towards the ball as if to play it, then pulls out of a shot just after completing the backlift, and the bat commences downward movement. It's a dead ball. So, Michael, I think you might be like, are you referring to an instance where a batter moves towards the ball as if to play it and then pulls out and tries to say, oh, but I wasn't ready? Is that what you're sort of getting at? Or I just need a bit of context for that.
Yeah, no, it's just basically normal play.
Yeah.
Batsman's ready, and then has he played a shot or not? And assuming, of course, that it doesn't hit him and whatever, and it goes for potentially byes. But how late is a no shot, or not playing a cricket shot, or not trying to avoid the ball?
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So I suppose when we're talking about whether or not a ball's dead, I'm thinking in this sort of circumstance, we're looking at whether him pulling out of a shot and whether he's trying to indicate that he wasn't ready to play it. I suppose you have to look at, I think to answer you, it's a really hard way to answer your question. The law just simply says that if a batter pulls out or doesn't offer a shot or doesn't play a shot or try to play the delivery and they're not ready. So it's really up to us at the time to work out, well, were they ready? And then change their mind about being ready, or were they simply not ready? If they were simply not ready, it's probably appropriate to call and signal dead ball. If you think, no, actually they were ready and they were actually shaping to play a shot and then aborted that, well, that's a whole different thing. They were ready, and that's how they decided to receive the delivery. So they had the opportunity to receive it. Play on is how I interpret that. Okay.
Michael, Peter Hooper had his hand up there.
Okay.
Excuse me, Michael. I had one a few years ago where a batter was in position to take the delivery and they were sitting there tapping their bat behind their foot and the bowler's running in and the batter never looked up.
Yeah.
And the ball was delivered, and I did call dead ball.
Yeah.
And it bowled the batter without him ever looking up.
Yeah.
Is that the right call?
Yeah. Yes, it is, Pete. I was going to say congratulations on actually spotting the fact that the batter hadn't looked up. That shows incredible match awareness, incredible match reaction to then make that determination that he still hasn't looked up, he still hasn't looked up, he still hasn't looked up. Bowler's entered the delivery stride. Yeah, I've got to dead ball this. I think that what you've described is excellent umpiring there. That's exactly what you should have done. And there will be times I've had a similar situation where almost similar to yours, where I was at square leg and I could see the batter hadn't looked up, tapping the bat, looking at the ground. Bowler's coming in, still hasn't looked up. Bowlers come in, they've sort of, as he's looked up, he's seen the bowler like looming in their approach. You could see he was kind of visibly surprised, and I was sort of waiting to see what would happen here. Bowlers delivered the ball. They've actually advanced down to go whack them. Missed. Got their bat back in their crease, and then looked up at the bowlers and umpire with the half Jesus going, "Oh, I wasn't ready." Well, we decided not to intervene at that point. You actually accepted that delivery by advancing down. Had you stayed put, had you made no attempt, I would have stepped in then and said to my bowlers and umpire, he was never ready. But he's accepted the shot, so he's accepted the ball. So I left it. Yeah.
Okay, thanks.
That's okay. So we're pretty clear on that, guys. We understand, that there's sometimes the ball becomes dead by itself where we don't need to call it. And then there are times when we do need to call it, and it's really important to know when those times are. The other point I wanted to make was there are times where the ball does become dead, but you are allowed under the law, if you read the law, to call and signal dead ball anyway, even though you don't need to. An example of that, where that might happen, or where I've actually done that, is when there's instances where a ball hits a helmet belonging to the fielding side. So it's been delivered and keepers missed it and it's sort of gone trickling in to the helmet. The law says that the ball automatically becomes dead. There's no need to call and signal it. However, I do. I at least call it for the players, call and signal it for the players. And that's more so as a way just to tell them, the ball's out of play, save your legs, to stop fielders chasing a ball that's hit the helmet or batters, trying to sprint out singles. That's an example where you could just call dead ball as a way of telegraphing to the players. It's not a requirement under the law, though, because it's already automatically dead. But yeah, understanding when we must and when it happens automatically is key. Understanding when the ball is in play and when it isn't has a lot of implications for a lot of connected laws, particularly Law 41, particularly laws around legal and illegal fielding. As we saw in those examples, certain things that a fielder might do that's illegal while the ball's in play wouldn't be illegal when the ball isn't in play. And it's really important for us to be aware of when it does. The big takeaway point is understanding when the ball becomes dead and not calling over or time too early before the ball has become dead. The other point, the last point I did want to make, I've got it written down here, is that when it comes to, where is it? When it comes to the ball becoming dead, sorry, I'm in the wrong slide. I had that information down here. Look, it'll come back to me. That's all right, though. We'll put dead ball aside now. If there's any other questions, feel free to put them into the chat as we go, if it comes up to you. What we're now going to move on to now is the no ball law. Okay, so I'm going to hand over to Nathan, who has kindly agreed to assist me in taking us through this very important law as well.
Yeah, no worries. Thanks, Michael. Don't envy you having to take on dead ball. So thanks for taking one for the team there. We'll go through Law 21 now, and like the dead ball law, there's plenty of aspects to it. One by one here. So 21.1 talks to the mode of delivery. So basically, whenever we have a bowler come on to bowl, we must identify whether they intend to bowl right or left-handed and whether they're going to bowl over or around the wicket. And they must inform us when this is going to change. If they fail to do so, it is a no ball. Important to note, obviously, in terms of match management, not needing to go up if you've got a spinner who's bowling over the wicket to, say, a right-hander and then around the wicket to a left-hander, you don't need to constantly go up every single time to advise that they're changing sides. Obviously, when they first come on to bowl, right arm over to you, to the right-handed batter, right arm around to you, to the left-handed batter. And then obviously update them as things change or when a new batter comes to the crease. But if they just decide to randomly go from over the wicket to around the wicket without letting you know, it's a no ball. And unlike decades gone by, underarm is no longer permitted in the game except by a special agreement before the match. Moving on to 21.2, which talks about the arm. Must stress here that you need to understand the difference between the laws and your playing conditions. Your playing conditions may talk to a suspect bowling action being dealt with rather than necessarily applying Law 21.2 in its entirety. But if we are playing under the laws, pretty simple. Ball must not be thrown. And the laws actually talk to here, a ball is fairly delivered in respect of the arm if once the bowler's arm has reached the level of the shoulder in the delivery swing, the elbow joint is not straightened partially or completely from that instance until the ball has left the hand. This definition, however, does not debar a bowling or does not stop a bowler from flexing or rotating the wrist in the delivery swing. Important to note that both umpires are able to call no ball. It is primarily the responsibility of the striker's end umpire, but the bowler's end umpire can also call it if they consider the ball to be thrown. Ultimately, if there is, and this gets into 21.3 as well, whether a ball is thrown or delivered underarm. First time that happens, obviously call and signal no ball, indicate it's a first and final warning that applies throughout the innings. And then any subsequent offence, it's a no ball, and the bowler is then suspended from the attack for the remainder of the innings, and you are required to report that through to the governing body. Keeping in mind that with Law 21.3, it is a mandatory report. So the laws, and we'll talk to this throughout multiple laws in subsequent sessions, there is a must, there is a can or a shall report. 21.3 is a must report. 21.4 talks to where a bowler throws the ball towards the striker's end before delivery. Where this happens, if a bowler throws the ball towards the striker's end before entering their delivery stride, in basically the old school way of trying to run somebody out, it is not a no ball, and procedure stated in 21.3, so around first and final warnings or removing people from the attack does not apply. However, the ball will be called and signalled a dead ball, as Michael referred to earlier tonight. Getting into 21.5, which talks about the feet, so the most common form of a no ball. So the back foot must land within and not touching the return crease on the side of the mode for delivery. So keeping in mind just the slightest of touches contravenes the law and must be called no ball. And the front foot must land with some part of the foot, whether grounded or raised, behind the popping crease. Moving through to 21.6, where a bowler breaks the wicket in delivering the ball. So obviously this is at the non-striker's end. So should the non-striker not be dismissed under Law 38, or basically they are not dismissed run out, the ball is a no ball. And at any time, should this happen at any time after the ball comes into play and before the completion of the stride after the delivery stride. So obviously we've got the delivery stride where the front foot lands. It's any time up until the step after that. And basically, if the bowler uses their clothing, their person, or any other object that falls from them, and that breaks the wicket at the non-striker's end, the ball is a no ball. However, that being said, we don't necessarily need to call that a dead ball. Play can continue. Uh, 21.7, an important to note here, the key distinction between bouncing more than once and rolling or pitching off the pitch. So 21.7, so if the ball bounces more than once or rolls before reaching the popping crease, it is to be called a no ball. And if the ball pitches partially or wholly off the pitch before it reaches the line of the striker's wicket, it is also to be called a no ball. 21.8, ball causing striker to leave the pitch or coming in to rest in front of the striker's wicket. That is a no ball and immediately a dead ball. Law 21.9, if the ball is delivered by the bowler and makes contact with any part of a fielder's person before it either makes contact with the striker's bat or person, it passes the striker's wicket, it will be called a no ball and immediately signalled as dead ball. Moving into 21.10, and again, this is another one where it's really important to know the difference between your laws and playing conditions. 21.10 is generally superseded by where a ball bounces over the head of the striker being called a wide. But in the case where you're playing by the laws of cricket, it is in fact a no ball. And that is to be assessed by the point at which the striker standing upright at the popping crease, the ball bouncing over the head of said striker. 21.11 talks to where no ball is to be called in relation to an infringement on the position of the wicketkeeper. In Law 27, in Law 28, the limitation of onside fielders. So Benny took us through this in our first session, where there's two fielders behind square on the leg side. 28.5, where fielders not to encroach on the pitch. And also in Law 41 around dangerous and unfair short pitch deliveries, non-pitching deliveries, or a deliberate front foot no ball. 21.12 talks to the times where an umpire can revoke the call of no ball, and that's if dead ball is called under Law 20.4.2, clauses 4, 5, 6, 8, and 10. 21.13, no ball is to override a wide. So if you have a scenario where a ball is both a no ball and a wide, it is a no ball, it is not a wide. 21.14 instead of 15, that's my bad there. The ball does not become dead on the call of no ball, so unlike dead ball, the ball continues to be in existence and play can continue. Just because we've made a call of no ball doesn't mean play cannot continue. 21.15 talks to the penalty for a no ball. So obviously it's 1 run instantly, which stands unless the call is revoked. That's then in addition to any other runs scored, boundary allowance, or penalties. 21.16 talks to runs resulting from a no ball and how they are scored. And I think we went through this when we talked about scoring runs in a previous session. So you have the 1 run penalty for a no ball, which is a no ball extra, which is debited to the bowler. But all other runs are scored accordingly, whether that's runs off the bat, leg byes. Obviously, a no ball does not count as one in the over. And last but not least, everyone's favourite in 21-18, a batter cannot be out from a no ball, except when they are dismissed, hit the ball twice, obstructing the field, or run out. So yeah, quite a lot of content in Law 21, but that is 1-18 there, Mick.
Thank you, Nathan. Really well done. That is a heavy-duty law to cover, and well done to our participants taking notes on that. Before we move on to wide, I think because no ball is such a sort of complex law as well, I'm happy to take any questions about no ball. We won't be doing this after every single law, but I think big laws like this, while it's still fresh in your mind, if there's any sort of questions or queries, now would be a good time to just get that out. So I've got Naveen with his hand up. Naveen, when you're ready, just turn your microphone on, please, and ask your question.
Yeah, sorry again, Michael. Just a quick question. So in terms of back foot touching the return crease, so my question is is it the first impact, the first impact of the back foot is not touching the return crease, but subsequently the foot goes down and touches the return crease? So my understanding is it's a first impact, or is it as soon as it touches, it's a no ball? So the question is whether is it the first impact, or if the back foot just touches the return crease, would that be called as a no ball, even though in the first instance of that back foot hasn't touched the return crease?
Yeah. So, yeah, the question you're asking, and I think it's based on the front foot idea that where first impact matters, where if first impact has the heel raised behind the line, that it is a fair delivery, even though no part of the foot is behind the line. Grounded.
It's breaking up. I couldn't hear that one. So.
Oh, sorry. Yeah. So we're talking about I think it possibly drawing a parallel here to say when a front foot lands legally but then slides, you're taking the first impact into account. So you're asking about the back foot and whether the foot lands inside the return crease and then subsequently touches the line. Again, it follows the same principle. It's the first impact with the ground that is important here. So what happens after that is of no consequence. It's the instant at which the foot, the back foot lands. Does that make sense?
I think Naveen's had a couple of sound issues there.
Yes.
Yeah, he'll be on the chat there.
That's okay. If you stick around at the end, Naveen, we can sort of break it down a bit more, mate. Yep, I'll chat to you about it shortly.
Dave Dancy's got his hand up.
Oh, yep, Dave.
See how he goes.
Any luck this time, Dave? I can't hear you. Your microphone is off, like it's off mute, but I'm not getting anything through. I'm not sure if anyone else is.
No.
Nope. Sorry,
Might be
mate.
worth putting that one in the chat as well, Dave.
Yeah.
Oh, there we go. So, in my other life as a bowler, I have been called for no ball because my back leg has broken the non-striker's wickets as I deliver the ball to the striker. Should that be a no ball or a dead ball?
These days, that is absolutely a no ball. Once upon a time, I don't know how far back in your other life you were a bowler. Once upon a time, it was not the case that it was a no ball. It wasn't even a dead ball necessarily. It was just play on. Then once the ball was dead, the umpire would have to remake the wicket. They did change that some years ago now. When I say some years, quite a few years ago now, where it was proving to be a bit of a distraction. So they said, well, if a bowler kicks the stumps, it's a no ball. So to answer your question, in the current laws, that would be correct. Whether they were the current laws when you were bowling, Dave, it may not have been correct to have called a no ball. You might have been stiffed there. So, but yep, in this day and age, if it happens, it's a no-y.
Hey, Dave, they didn't cover the wickets back then either.
Yeah, Dave, for that one, you can actually thank Stephen Finn.
Yes.
It's one of the international breakers of that rule, and that I think Anthony Martin has put into the chat that it was changed around 2015. I believe
That'd be
the
right.
MCC law may have actually been around 2013, but
that'd be right.
So we call and signal no ball when you break the non-striker's wicket accidentally.
Excellent. If there's no further questions, I'll introduce Tom Logan now to talk to us about wide ball.
Thanks, Michael. Good evening, everyone. Yeah, we're going to have a chat about wides now. Not quite as many clauses as the previous two, but some important ones nonetheless. So the text of 22.1 is our fundamental principles. Ball not being a no ball, as Nathan has said, judging it wide if, according to the definition, the ball passes wide of where the striker is standing, or, and this is the change that happened in 2022, has stood at any point after the ball came into play for that delivery, and which also would have passed wide of the striker standing in a normal batting position. So the first part of that law has more or less been the same for quite some time, as long as I've been umpiring, and quite a few decades before that. The second part changed in response to batters being more likely in the modern game to be moving around the wicket. Of course, we're talking purely about the law here, not relating to any.
He's done the bin, yeah. Hey, did you get the stuff in the freezer? Yeah, good.
Go on mute, sorry. Talking about the law here, not about any playing condition which might apply, particularly in limited overs cricket. That concept does still apply in any form of cricket where we're talking about where the batter might be moving around. So they take into if it would have hit them at any point where they've stood after the ball came into play for that delivery. And remember, going back to a few laws ago, the ball came into play for that delivery, as Michael said, when the bowler commenced their run up. So you've got to be aware of what they're doing from that point of time. Of course, the bowler is going to be standing behind you, but generally, as part of your routine, you're going to have a pretty good idea of when the batter's gone over their bat, the keeper's crouched down, etc. Those sorts of cues. As to judging what they could and couldn't have reached, we're essentially trying to have the bowler deliver the ball so that the striker can reasonably hit it with a normal cricket strike. So it's got to be comfortably reachable, Tom Smith talks about, so playable within reason. There's a few good diagrams in that Tom Smith book as well for you to go and look at in your own spare time about where a batter could or couldn't have reached it. If it's just hitting, if they could only reach it with the very toe of their bat, doesn't mean it wasn't a wide. They've got to be able to play a proper cricket stroke to that ball. Also, you've got a couple of other diagrams which demonstrate that a batter's reach might be a bit less for a ball which is lower down, and also demonstrating that just because if the batter's bat was at the wrong height and they couldn't hit it for that reason, obviously it won't be a wide. Let's just have a look at some of those diagrams there. Importance of consistency is also talked about as well. So the umpire's got to apply the same judgment consistently as with any law, but regardless of the match stage from start to end, and importantly, the batter's changing approach or intent. So you might often see when you're playing under the laws of cricket, such as in your 2-day and red ball cricket, batters might be doing different things later in innings when they're chasing quick runs or what have you. Bowlers might be bowling a line which might be more in accordance with limited overs cricket. We've got to put that out of our minds a little bit and apply the laws of cricket as they're written. So apply a ball bowled just as wide as it was in the first over of the game as later in the innings when they might be trying to do something a little bit different. A couple of other factors, you need to be taking into account the height and reach of the batter. That's going to affect your judgment as to whether that particular batter could have hit that ball. Law 22.2. So when you call and signal, obviously we need to demonstrate we're on top of things and giving a good early call. So we're calling and signaling the wide as soon as the ball passes the striker's wicket, but the ball is considered to have been a wide from the instance that the bowler entered their delivery stride. Why does this matter, you might ask? Quite often it won't. However, when we talk about the ball becoming dead at the end of the match, as Michael did earlier, and also the winning hit concept, which I talked about last week, it can be relevant then. That'll never happen, you say. It happened in a one-day international between Scotland and Nepal last month. Scores were level. It was 9 wickets down. A wide was called. A stumping or run-out was attempted. However, given the wide was called, the ball was wide from the instance of the delivery stride, and that being the winning run ended the match from that very moment, even though the call of wide can't have happened until a few seconds later. I'll pop a reference to that in the chat after this, just so you can see for your own viewing pleasure how that might actually turn out. 22.3, revoking a call of wide ball. So obviously, if there's contact between the ball and the striker's bat or person before contact with a fielder, so you might have gone off a little bit early. Obviously, if it's contacted the striker's bat or person, it must therefore have been within reach. So you would need to revoke in that instance. So the timing of when you should call it should be a good guide to hopefully avoid you coming into that situation. But the law then does cover you if you find that has happened to you. And of course, as Nathan had said, if there is later a call of no ball, for instance, you might have called a ball for the line or the height of the ball. Your colleague at square leg might then have called a no ball for reasons including a fielding restriction breach or too many fielders being behind square on the leg side, for instance. So you would then revoke a call of wide and signal it as a no ball. When is it not a wide though? A ball is not considered wide if the striker moves to cause the ball to pass wide of them. So, for instance, if the batter backs away to the leg side and a ball that would have been a reasonable delivery outside off stump that they therefore cannot reach, that is the batter's problem. Essentially, the batter's movements can only increase the area that a bowler's got to bowl legally into it, but a batter's movement cannot decrease it, is the way I like to think of it. And likewise, if the striker brings the ball sufficiently within reach of being able to be hit by a normal cricket stroke, so a similar concept to what I mentioned in the previous dot points. To finish off on the wide law, obviously the ball is not dead merely because it has been called wide. The ball is generally going to have been passed either through to the keeper or past the wicket keeper. There's still the opportunity for more things to happen in that game. provided it's not over, as in these circumstances that I described before. But you obviously on your whereabouts, you're calling and signaling wide straight away. But then being aware of what else is has happened on that ball before it becomes dead for some other reason. The penalty, as we're all familiar with, 1 run wide instantly, which stands even if a batter is dismissed. And the next dot point talks about what dismissals are possible in relation to any other runs scored. So, for instance, if the ball is then missed by the wicketkeeper and the batters run further, any runs scored by them will be additional wides. If it goes to the boundary, same as. So you might have 1 run for the wide, plus 4 further runs for the boundary, all count as wides in that instance and all go against the bowler. So anything that happens off a wide goes against the bowler, with the exception of penalty runs. So, for instance, a wide ball might have then hit a fielder's helmet, which has been placed on the ground. There might have been legal fielding, all those sorts of other 5-run penalties. Those don't go against the bowler, but everything else does. Finally, the wide will not count as one of the over. Obviously, if the batter hasn't had the opportunity to hit that ball, we're asking the bowler to re-bowl that ball. And finally, finishing off, you can be dismissed by a wide in the following reasons, which are always handy to know. Well, not least for quizzes and such, but out the field most importantly as well. So it can be hit wicket off a wide, you can be obstructing the field off a wide, you can be run out, and you can be stumped. So the only one that would be credited to the bowler as well as being a wide. I think that takes me to the end of the wide law.
That does. We're at the end of Law 22.
I will take a couple of questions that I've seen in the chat box there. We've got one from Chris and one from Brendan. So Chris asks about when a wide is bowled and then passes the wicket keeper and goes for further runs. Asking about a fieldcraft question here. Should you signal wide immediately and keep your arms out until the ball is dead? You should signal wide immediately from when it passes the batter, yes. And in terms of keeping your arms out until the ball is dead, I'd say probably not. I would assume that if it's beating the keeper and there is a chase for it, that you'd be moving from your position at the bowler's end to a side-on position to adjudge a potential run-out from the bowler's end that might result. So I wouldn't recommend. I would actually say please don't walk around with your arms out like the risen Jesus as you walk to your position. That looks silly. You can just put your arms down, walk to your position, stand there, wait for the ball to become dead. But when the ball does become dead, you would then turn to the scorers and call and signal wide ball. That's the important thing. But yes, I don't want to see umpires walking around with their arms flapping. That's not the look we're looking for. If you need to move, arms down and move. If you don't need to move and there's nothing else happening, it's just a straight out wide, it's okay then to turn with your arms around to face the scorers after the ball is dead. Brendan asks, what about the reasoning as to why it can be out stumped? You can be out stumped off a wide ball, but not a no ball. And you could probably ask the same question about a hit wicket as well. Why can you be out hit wicket on a no ball, on a wide ball, but not a no ball? And I suppose that a no ball is given a sort of higher or a stricter status under the laws than a wide ball. The striker's given some immunity from dismissal from a wide ball, but not as much as they would from a no ball. For stumping and, I guess, hit wicket, both of those things would indicate that a striker's intent to play at the ball, even though it's wide. So if in doing so, if you're attacking a wide ball, you're sort of taking on some risk in the hope of getting some reward. Some of those risks include dismissal in ways that you wouldn't under a no ball, including getting stumped and hitting your own wicket. In those circumstances, you're generally doing that because you're attacking a wide ball. You're effectively accepting that wide delivery. So that's probably why. Okay, we might move on now to Law 23, which is bye and leg bye. So those runs that are scored from legal deliveries or not legal deliveries that aren't credited to the striker and are not no ball extras or wides. So the overall principle between here is, or as explained in Law 18, there are ways that a batter can score runs without the striker having hit the ball, which are known as byes and leg byes. These are scored as extras. They're added to the total score, but they're not credited to the batter or debited to the bowler, except in the case of runs from a wide, which are debited as wides from the bowler, and rightly so, as it's down to their inaccuracy. But things like byes and byes and leg byes are not considered the fault of the bowler. Obviously byes are ball delivered by a bowler, which is not a wide, which passes the striker without touching anything on the striker. And obviously it's scored in conjunction with any no balls that do apply. The byes are runs that are scored in that way. Leg byes, in a similar sort of way, are balls that strike the person of a striker, under the condition that the umpire is satisfied that the striker's either attempted to play the ball with the bat, or attempted to hit the ball with the bat, or attempted to move to avoid being hit by the ball. And if neither of those things applies, the ball doesn't become dead for any other reason, or the umpire is to call and signal dead ball as soon as a ball reaches the boundary or at the completion of the first run. This is an example, going back to my favourite dead ball law, where it's a common misconception I find among players, where there's an instance where the ball's come off the pad of a striker who has not attempted to play a genuine stroke at it, and therefore isn't entitled to runs gained by leg byes. And players are very, very quick to tell us he hasn't played a shot, but they're taking the run anyway. Often players will say, but that's a dead ball, he's not entitled to that run, it's a dead ball, when in fact it's not. And it's important for us to know that it's not a dead ball yet. If neither applies, unless the ball does become dead for any other reason than this scenario, the ball is called and signaled dead ball as soon as it either reaches the boundary or at the completion of the first run. The reason that is because the laws seek to give the fielding side the opportunity to run out a batter if they're deciding to run on leg byes that they're not entitled to because they didn't try and hit it or avoid getting hit. So if in a sense they're trying to scam a leg bye. If this does happen, the ball is called dead. The batters returned to their original positions. The runs that they have attempted to score are disallowed, except for any no balls, if applicable, and any 5-run penalty that comes from it, except the 5-run penalty that would normally come from a ball hitting the fielder's a helmet belonging to the fielding side. To talk more about that, if there is an instance, for example, where a bowler delivers a ball which contacts the striker's pad and the striker has made no attempt to play it, they've just padded it, the ball has then been missed by the keeper in their attempt to glove it, and it's rolled onto the helmet. What happens then? Now, normally, if it were to come off the bat or come off nothing or come off the striker's person and they were attempting to, whoa.
All right. Looks like we've lost Michael for some reason. So just one moment while we re-establish that. Ladies and gentlemen, I'd play some elevator music if I had it. Here we go.
Thanks for that bus throw, Peter Hooper. Appreciate that, mate.
Apologies, everyone. I don't know what happened there. I was kicked out of my own session. I do apologise.
There we go. So we've got the slides back up there, Michael.
Thank you.
And
okay.
You've got control. All yours, mate.
I'm heading back to it now. Okay. So as I was saying, obviously, yeah. So the buys and leg buys, in a situation where the ball rolls onto the helmet, and it had come off the person of a striker who had not attempted to hit it or avoid injury, they would not be entitled to those penalty runs that would normally come. In the same way, they're not entitled to run leg buys. The intention of that law is clear. Runs are to be scored preferably by the bat, and if they can't be scored off the bat, they need to be scored off an attempt to hit them with the bat. And the reason for that is very obvious. We do not want to see people coming up with all the walking out with all the internal padding underneath, and hockey goalkeeping deliveries, in the hope of chasing cheap runs without actually having to risk getting out by scoring. So just important to remember that if it ever comes up, if they're not entitled to leg buys, they're not entitled to those penalty runs that would come from the ball hitting a helmet belonging to the fielding side. So that's something to write down in your study notes, and keep that as one to remember. The reason why is because it'll never happen until it does, and if you remember it, you're brilliant. So that's the big thing about leg buys. There needs to be an intent to hit it or to move to avoid injury. We had a situation some years ago in a test match. I believe it was a Boxing Day test match, Australia and New Zealand. It might have been before the Boxing Day, actually. It might have been Adelaide, where Matthew Wade had lost his mind, literally, and was... I'm trying to remember the bowler. I think it might have been Wagner. He was chesting up to Wagner and got to a stage where he wasn't able to actually play Wagner at all. All he could do was, because Wagner was bowling short to him, and all he did was stand there and just chest them back to him. He left that day bruised and battered, but probably felt pretty big that day. However, he was, I believe it was him, denied leg buys because he literally didn't try and move. He just stood and balked it. He didn't make any movement to avoid injury. He probably had a point to say, well, mate, I've been wearing these short deliveries all day. Surely you could have just let me have those pity leg buys. But the umpire was quite correct under the law. You've actually got to be moving to avoid injury in order to be entitled to take those leg buys if you're not attempting to hit the ball. So things to look at of a striker attempting to play the ball. You might hear things like deliberately padding away. Often if there's a spin bowler on, a leg spinner or something, particularly when they're pitching them outside leg, you might see batters choose to what colloquially known as kicking them away. And so we just need to be obviously mindful that a batter doing that is not looking to hit the ball with the bat, but they're quite entitled to do that. Padding up is not illegal, but they can't obviously gain a run from it. A run off it if it comes off their person. They need to use their bat to get runs. So examples of not attempting to play the ball. Things like the bat being very clearly behind the pad in a forward defence. So they're leaning forward with their pad leading and the bat is like hidden behind the pad. Is a classic example of pretending to play the ball but actually having no intention of trying to hit the ball. I'm just going to put my bat out there and hope people fall for it. Things like the striker planting their leg in line and swinging their bat away from the ball deliberately, so just choosing to not hit it. So it might be a fuller ball and they're playing a cross bat shot up here, clearly not intending to hit it. Why they would do that, I don't know, but stranger things have happened. The key from us as umpires, obviously, our big responsibility here is to use judgment, and use judgment and knowledge of the game in order to assess accurately whether a batter is genuinely trying to hit it or not. Not all batters intend to deceive. Sometimes it'll look like, that the stroke was so bad that it must have been deliberate, when in fact, no, they just weren't good enough to hit the ball then. It wasn't a poor attempt or a half attempt to hit the ball. It was a genuine attempt. It just didn't look good. We really need to understand the batters in front of us and our common sense as to whether, they're trying to get one over us or they just genuinely didn't have the skill to play it. The laws allow leg byes when a batter's trying to attempt to hit it. Just because they don't have the skill doesn't mean necessarily that they're not entitled to it. So really important that we know what it is we're watching, and then obviously backing ourselves. Obviously, under those leg bye rules, the runs that do get awarded are scored as leg byes. Obviously, if it comes off the bat, they're accredited to the striker. And that is also any no balls or things like that count as they generally do when it comes to scoring runs. Okay. We've talked about, I've gone through this already about when they're not awarded. We went through that. So unless there's any questions about leg byes, I'm happy to move on.
So Adrian's got a question around, would it be a dead ball if a player kept bat behind pad and the ball hits the pad and then the bat goes, and I assume, Adrian, you mean the ball goes to the boundary, not the bat goes to the boundary, still a dead ball?
Yep. Yes, absolutely. Yep. But the ball is still in play, obviously, until it reaches the boundary. So obviously that would allow a fielding side to run out batters if they do decide to run. Even if they don't decide to run, the ball is still in play until either it crosses the boundary or if the batters are not running, the ball might stop before the boundary and the fielding side and batters cease to regard the ball as being in play. It might become dead. but we don't just call it dead because it's come off the pad of a striker not attempting to hit it or to avoid being hit. And it's not automatically dead either. Okay.
Bruce has got his hand up.
Bruce.
Yeah, just regarding that 23.2, the disallowed runs, can you
Yeah.
just go back to the screen?
Hang on.
Okay, the last one, the last comment on 23.2.
23.2. Yes.
So the last.
Here we go.
Yes.
With the disallowed runs to the batting side.
Yes.
So if you disallowed the runs to the batting side, you wouldn't count that. You'd count that ball in the over.
Yes.
You
Yes.
wouldn't get the opportunity to have another ball.
No.
Okay.
And the reason that is because obviously they've had the opportunity to face that ball and they've made the decision they've made. It's not re-bowled. The ball is called and signalled dead ball after the strikers had an opportunity to play with. So as per the dead ball law, that would normally count as a delivery. It's not one of those ones where the delivery, the ball is to be re-bowled. Yep.
Thank you.
No worries. Okay. I believe I've tasked Nathan again to take us through Law 29, which talks about a wicket being broken or put down.
Yeah, thanks, Mick. Yeah, we'll go through Law 29 now. So again, there's a few technical parts to Law 29, so we'll go through those as best we can. So 29.1, the wicket is broken. So it's broken when either one bail is completely removed from the top of the stumps or one or more stumps is removed from the ground. 29.2 actually talks to how that can be done fairly. So wicket is broken fairly if this occurs via contact with the ball, by the striker's bat if held, or by any part of the bat that they are holding. For the purposes of this law, only by the striker's bat, not in hand or any part of the bat that becomes detached. Where it is broken by the striker's personal clothing, excluding the protective helmet. So if a ball happens to hit a batter in the face, say with enough force to knock the helmet off, that is not breaking the wicket fairly, but any other part of their personal clothing is fair game. Also broken fairly by a fielder with their hand or arm, providing the ball is held in said hand or hands of the armed use. And lastly, if a striker pulls a stump out of the ground, providing the ball is held in the hand or hands used to do so. So yeah, not sufficient to have stump in one hand, ball in the other. It's got to be a together motion. 29.3 talks to a scenario where one bail has come off. So where that has happened, it is sufficient for breaking the wicket fairly to remove the remaining bail. And in 29.4 talks about how the wicket can be remade. So when it comes to our part in remaking the wicket, as umpires, we will not do that until the ball is dead. However, that does not stop a fielder whilst the ball is in play, prevent them from placing a bail on top of the stumps, or putting back in one or more stumps into the ground where the wicket originally stood. 29.5 talks to the dispensing of bails, and what constitutes breaking of the wicket fairly in this scenario is where the umpire concerned is satisfied the wicket has been struck by the ball, by the striker's bat, person or equipment. It does not talk to the force of the strike. So we're obviously, when we are playing with bails, we need to have enough force to remove a bail. When we are playing without bails, we just have to be satisfied that the stump or wicket has been struck.
And I'm up now for our final law of the night, when the batter is out of his or her ground, which set us up nicely for perhaps some dismissals in subsequent weeks. Law 30. When they're out of their ground, so the batter is considered to be out of their ground unless some part of their person or bat is grounded behind the popping crease. That'll be a familiar concept to everyone. But here's the exception, and this is, of course, one which has had a few modifications over the last few codes of cricket, so important to be up to date on this one. Batter shall not be considered out of their ground if in running or diving towards their ground and having grounded some part of their person or bat beyond the popping crease, there is a subsequent loss of contact either between the ground and any part of their person or bat, or the bat and their person. So a couple of different situations described there. So the first one, you might often hear about it being spoken about as the bat has bounced after it has been grounded, as can happen to do, particularly if you haven't slid your bat. But as long as you have made contact with the ground beyond the popping crease first, key point, a subsequent loss of contact won't prohibit you from being in your crease. Distinguished, of course, from if you've grounded before the crease and then bounced up, you won't have made your ground until you subsequently, with your bat or person, touched the ground beyond the popping crease. Of course, that's one that gets talked about in a lot of slow motion replays on television. When you're looking at it live, you might pick up on these things, but it might be a little bit less obvious. And finally, between the bat and the person. So you might, as long as you have grounded your bat, if you've then subsequently dropped your bat, so long as you have first made your ground, you'll still be considered to be in your ground. The other key part is there, you still need to be going in the same direction. So the protection applies if you're running or diving, and if you're not turning back for the other run. So you're still going the same way. You're not thinking about going back in the other direction. Which is a batter's ground. So often to work out if someone's been dismissed or who has been dismissed, or whether they've crossed, for instance, for the purposes of other laws, which might then dictate whether a run in progress has been scored or not. So if each batter is in a different ground, then each owns that ground. That's a simple case. If both are between grounds, then each ground belongs to whoever is closest. If only one is within a ground, it's their ground and remains so, even if they are later joined there by the other batter. So if you've had one batter who's run and one hasn't, just due to some catastrophic mix-up, if one is in their ground, they cannot be made out of their ground merely by the other batter subject also reaching that ground. So if the wickets are broken at the other end, the batter who was the second to reach the other end will be the one dismissed. If there's no batter in either ground, each belongs to the one that was nearest to it. If the batters are level, it belongs to whichever batter was nearer to it immediately prior to drawing level. Crossing, we heard talk about. Crossing occurs when no part of the batter's bodies or equipment overlap, which is going to affect your run-out decisions, who's on strike for the next ball, and run counts, as I've sort of alluded to. And then a striker with a runner is the other complicating factor. We talked a lot about runners last week, and of course, an injured striker, their ground will always be at the striker's end. The other two apply as usual, so whichever is closest to their respective ends. So that's going to mean that there is going to, at any one time when you've got a runner, two batters are going to have their ground at the striker's end, being the injured striker, and whichever other batter, either the other batter or their runner, is closest to that end. And finally, the position of the non-striker. It's a slightly different topic, but important one to know. Often operates by convention, and this is why. So the non-striker, when standing at the bowler's end, should be positioned on the opposite side of the wicket to the one that the bowler is bowling from. The umpire can allow exceptions, but they've got to ensure that the non-striker doesn't obstruct the bowler, the striker, or other fielder. And the umpire's also got to make sure that they can still observe the non-striker's movements. So they might choose to move. Often, if you've got a close-in catcher or fielder on the same side as the non-striker fielding close to the wicket, you'll often have the fielder's entitled to stand there. You'll often have the non-striker just move a little bit wider on the same side. If, for whatever reason, they think it's a tad slippery on that side a little bit further over, they might request to go on the other side. Sometimes you've got a bit of a slope on a drop off from the block on one side of the wicket, and they might want to run on the other side. That's okay, so long as they ask you and you're satisfied that they're not going to obstruct either one. So you're going to have them far enough away from the bowler that they're not going to interfere with the bowler's follow through, any other fielder, and you've of course got to know where they are, so they can't be too far away on that other side as well. And that brings us to end of law 30.3 and all of our laws for tonight. So we're going to throw back we'll have some questions first, and then back to Michael for the quiz.
Thanks, Tom. Yes, we do have some questions, and we'll invite questions additionally as well. Anything regarding bye and leg bye, the wicket being put down, and the batter being out of their ground. I've got Patrick on the chat, who can't remember the last time a test umpire called a dead ball when the batter tucked the bat behind the pad. I'm thinking, took away or disallowed leg bye attempts. If the bat's in the same postcode, it seems to be close enough. Why the difference? I don't really have an answer for that, Pat. Only thing I can think of is it might happen a lot less at test level than it might have once. I wasn't, I think these days you're less likely at test level, particularly in the like the proper test nations, the big players. You're less likely to see like bunnies or batters who are so well out of their depth. That they don't know how to play shots. Most of the even bowlers now who are not test batters by any means are coached well enough that they're able to hit it. So they seem less likely to try and do things like that. That's just a theory I have. I'm not sure. Naveen asks about dispensing the bails. So when we talk about dispensing the bails, we're talking about a decision by the umpires to no longer, well, to not use bails for a period of time, usually on windy conditions. So that's what that refers to. So when you're asking about one of the bails falling, it is important to note that if you're dispensing the bails, you are dispensing both bails at both ends. It's either all bails or no bails. You've clarified by saying dislodging. And you're asking about the odd scenario where a bail is dislodged from its groove and then subsequently lands back down onto the stump and does not hit the ground. And in that case, it does not satisfy the breaking of a wicket or the breaking of the stumps or fair put down of the stumps. So it's play on. And yes, the batter could consider themselves very lucky. It has happened at high level. I think we all remember the Joe Root bail jump at Melbourne, I think, where it did pop out of the groove and then land back in again. So important to note that just simply being disturbed is not enough. It needs to be dislodged and remain dislodged. Were there any other questions on the later laws we covered? Pete Hooper.
Peter Hooper's got his hand up.
On the batter making their ground, if a batter dives to make their ground and the bat is on the crease, but the whole of their body isn't, and then while the ball is in play, they let go of the bat, and the wickets are gone.
So you're talking about a scenario where a batter's dived, made their ground, the bat has left the ground, and then the bat has then subsequently left the grip of the batter. Is that what you're saying? Yeah. So if we go back to that,
covered in 30.1 there, Michael. So that's the loss of contact between the bat and the person. So long as they have already made their ground.
Yes.
That's loss of contact between the bat and the person is what Peter has described there. As long as they are still moving in the same direction towards the wicket they are running towards, they'll be not out.
So the key words there.
If they're not moving, it would be out.
If they haven't made it home first, they would be out. If they had made it home and the bat had left the ground, but they were not running or diving towards their ground, they had instead turned and run towards the other ground for a second run, they would be out.
They're lying flat on the ground, so they've dived.
Yeah, well, if they're facing or diving, they're flat out on the ground, which means they've dived. And obviously, I would be imagining towards their ground. So the law protects them there. Yeah. What it's designed to do is it's designed to obviously not punish them for not trying to take another run. So the intent, obviously, there isn't to take another run. The bat's just come loose. They're not seeking to gain advantage that they haven't already got by making their ground. Okay. If there's no further questions for now, we might move on to the quiz, and then those who would like to stick around for some deeper dives into particular parts or some further clarification can do so at the end of the quiz. If you've had your fill of laws tonight, you'll be welcome to say your good nights after the quiz as well. But we'll be around for a little bit longer. Okay, we might move on now to the quiz. Okay, so just bumping along here. All right. So the first question asks, when does a ball cease to be dead? Basically, when does it come back into play? And the option we should have chosen is when the bowler starts his or her run-up, or if there is no run-up, starts his or her bowling action for the next delivery. The next question asks, in which of the following situations is the ball automatically dead? And we can see from those answers, the three scenarios is when it hits the side screen, obviously because that's beyond the boundary. When a fielder who's been absent comes onto the field without permission and catches the ball. and if a batsman is given out by the umpire. In all those instances, the ball is dead from the instance of causing a dismissal, and it's automatically dead. There's no need to call it. Would you call and signal no ball if, in the delivery stride, both bowlers' feet land behind the bowling crease and inside the return crease? No, that's fine. The bowler's back foot lands inside the return crease and the front foot lands across the return crease behind the popping crease. And the answer is no. The front foot and the return crease have no relationship. The front foot can touch the return crease. It's only the back foot that can't. Obviously, when the bowler's back foot lands with the heel just touching the return crease and the front foot lands wherever, obviously that's a no ball. The back foot cannot touch the return crease at all. And in the situation where the bowler's back foot lands inside the return crease and the front foot lands with the heel just behind the popping crease and then slides forward so that it ends up over the crease before the ball's delivered, the answer to that is no, it is not a no ball. Only the first landing of that front foot is what counts here. What happens after that is of no consequence. So some of those skiddy foot bowlers who end up taking themselves in front of the line, provided they land behind the line, they're okay. Okay. The umpire calls and signals a no ball. The striker makes no contact with the ball, which eludes the wicketkeeper and crosses the boundary. The questions are how many runs are scored, how are they recorded, and what are the signals. Obviously, it's 5 runs because you have the boundary 4 buys plus the 1 run no ball, and that's how they're recorded. And the signals in order are no ball, bye, and boundary 4. And each of those signals need acknowledging. So we should be seeing 3 waves or 3 flashes of the light or 3 acknowledgements from the scorers after each of those signals. Okay. In what ways can a striker be out from a no ball? They can be out hitting the ball twice, obstructing the field, and run out. At what point is a delivery considered to be a wide, and at what point shall it be called a wide? And we've said this a few times. Now the delivery is considered to have been a wide from the instant the bowler enters their delivery stride. It should be called wide as soon as the ball passes the striker's wicket. So there is a discrepancy, or there is a window of time between when it actually is wide and when it is called wide. The next question says the striker makes no attempt to play the ball, which is deflected off their pad to fine leg. The non-striker calls for a run and sets off. After initial reluctance, the striker runs towards the bowler's end umpire. What will the bowler's end umpire do? If the first answer there was call dead ball, the answer is no. They do not first call dead ball. They call and signal dead ball as soon as the ball reaches the boundary or at the completion of the first run. Any runs that are scored, they will disallow, and they will return any not out batter to their original end. Okay. The umpires have agreed to play without bails. Which of these events would mean that the wicket has been put down? A ball strikes one of the stumps but does not disturb it. In this case, it is put down because it has contacted the stump. The striker knocks the wicket with his bat in making his or her back lift. The stump is pushed askew but not removed out of the ground. It doesn't need to be. All that needs to have happened was that contact was made with the bat. And one stump is already askew from a previous attempt. I should have said from a previous attempt at a run out. A fielder holding the ball in her hands uses that stump to knock this particular stump further out of the vertical. Because there are no bails involved, that is still an instance of putting down the wicket or breaking the wicket. because all that needs to happen is contact with the stump. The batter dives to make good his ground and finishes still holding his bat but lying on the pitch. He is outside his crease. The toe of his bat is on the marking of the popping crease. Is he in his ground? So the key there is that he is outside of his crease. The toe of his bat is on the outline of the popping crease. No part of his bat is in the popping crease, nor has it been. So unfortunately, he is out. We have a bowler delivering a ball, which is called and signalled no ball, and the batter attempts to play at the ball but misses it. The ball hits the striker's wicket and both bails are dislodged. The batsman is not aware that a no ball has been called and signalled and starts to walk off the field, assuming he is out bowled. A fielder throws the ball at the striker's wickets and the ball knocks the stump completely out of the ground. Now, this is probably this one's escaped from the Law 31, the appeal. But I'm going to go with this one because there is a dead ball component too. With the striker out of his ground, there is an appeal. What action is required by the umpire? So what this was actually talking about was a misapprehension, and we're going to be covering that in the very next law. However, this is a case where a call and signal of dead ball would apply if the umpire believes that the striker has left their wicket thinking falsely that they were out. They stop and call and signal dead ball in a way to try and stop any further play from happening or further attempt at scoring runs or taking wickets. So that's just a little reference there to how the dead ball sort of interacts with so many other of the laws and why it's really important that we know that. And that concludes session 3. And we're finishing with just a few minutes to spare. Next week, we're going to look at appeals and dismissals. So be sure to join us on there for next week. Thank you all for joining tonight. I hope you've gotten out of this what you hope to get out of it. We do have a couple of sessions remaining, and as always, your participation has been welcomed. I'm going to stick around for a little while. If you do have questions or you want to, if something's really nagging at you, I'm happy to stick around and chat all night if you like. Otherwise, have a really good night and have a good coming week, and hope to see you soon.
All righty. Thank you very much, Michael.